Okay, welcome back everybody to session number 6 on chapter 5. So before we start, let's start with the prayers. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so chapter 5 entitled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. The acronym for this chapter is called STEP, S-T-E-P, and let's start. So let us have a quick recap. So chapter 2, the acronym was Gita, where we discussed Guru, identity, two duties, and Atmaram. So Krishna actually gave the knowledge to Arjuna about Sankhya Yoga, the difference between spirit and matter, and he said to Arjuna that actually you are a spirit soul embodied in a material body. Okay. Then he said to use his buddhi. Once you know this identity of who you are, then you utilize your intellect to understand that you've got two types of duties: your Swadharma and your Sanatan Dharma, and then you need to do both of these side by side. When you perfect these two things side by side, you become an Atmaram. That means that you find peace. You find peace. Now, what Arjuna understood is that this peace that Krishna is talking about, he understood it to be outer peace. So he thought like, okay, if I don't fight the war, if I use my buddhi to do an activity that actually leads to peace, then the activity that I need to perform is not fight. So he was looking at outer peace. But what Krishna is talking about is inner peace. Okay? So this is chapter 2. Chapter 3 is called, what was the thing? Tree. T stands for Tyag, R is for the rungs on the yoga ladder, E is for exemplary, and E is for eternal enemy. So Arjuna asks in chapter 3, what is better, to work or to give up work? That's the thing. Do I tyag everything and just go to the forest, or should I actually fight? So Krishna expands on that model that Arjuna thought, that if you fight, I'm only fighting because I'm attached, or if I don't fight, that's because I'm not attached. But no, Krishna says that any action you do, you can be attached or detached, or even if you don't do an action, you can be not attached or attached. Okay? So he expanded. If you look at chapter 3, there's a big model that we said, the Krishna's model. Okay? And then the end of chapter 3, Krishna tells to Arjuna that the reason why we get entangled in our actions is because of the eternal enemy known as lust. The lust is what covers our real knowledge of our constitutional position. It impels us to work in a self-centered way. And then in chapter 4, Krishna says, to defeat this enemy known as lust, you need transcendental knowledge. This transcendental knowledge is given through the eternal education system, which was set up by Krishna himself, and it has come down through saintly people. Now Krishna explains that to gain this knowledge, when one gains this knowledge, one can discriminate on what type of action is best to do. Yeah? So he says that even the intelligent are bewildered when determining action in inaction and inaction in action. This is one of the most tantalizing verses in the entire Gita. It is extraordinarily confusing. This is 4.18. I'm talking about 4.18. When you look at 4.18, this is what Krishna says, that even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Yeah? But he says once you get this transcendental knowledge, you will get an accurate understanding and full discrimination power. And with that, one can do akarma. And when you do akarma, because there are 3 types: karma, vikarma, and akarma. When you do akarma, it burns away all the reactions. And Krishna then emphasized that to achieve this transcendental knowledge, we can only do it through sacrifice. And then Krishna tells Arjuna in the last of chapter 4 that you should fight your doubts with this knowledge. So now Arjuna knows that renunciation in knowledge involves cessation for works for personal sense gratification. I need to not perform things for my benefit, for my material desires. Okay? But Arjuna's confusion is that if one performs work in devotional service, then how is work actually stopped? So he finds work and renunciation to still be mutually exclusive. He cannot find a way to bring it together. So in the beginning of chapter 5, Arjuna again asked the same question in 5.1 as the same one he asked in the beginning of the 3rd chapter. But what is the small difference? He asked, what is the difference between renunciation of work in knowledge and renunciation in work, which was in chapter 3? Okay? So what does renunciation of work in knowledge actually mean? It means that once you get knowledge, once you get transcendental knowledge, you realize that there are 3 types of activities to do, that one can do. One can do karma, akarma, or vikarma. So once you got knowledge about the different types of actions you can do, then you can make an informed decision of what is the one to do. And so you understand that we have to do akarma and we don't have to do karma or vikarma. So with knowledge you understand this is the right action I need to do. But in chapter 3, Krishna tells him to just give up your material desires and work as for my benefit or as a sacrifice to me. So that already is the prescription of doing akarma. So whether you understand and do it or you just follow it and do it. Just like if you go to a doctor, if you're a medical man, you'll know the knowledge behind how this medicine works. Or you could just trust the doctor and follow the prescription and both of them will give you the same effect. Whether you have the knowledge of how the medicine works or you have faith in the doctor who is giving you the medicine. Both ways is still going to give you the same benefit. Yeah? So Krishna then reveals that detached or without expectation of work is the same as working in full knowledge. Why? Because both work in full knowledge and detached work is non-binding. Hence, they are the same. So now chapter 5 focus will be on applying the transcendental knowledge practically in action. Okay? It takes the theoretical framework that has been created in chapter 3 and chapter 4 and it is applying it in real life now in chapter 5. So now we look at the model again, but in a different way a bit. Okay? So as I said, you can be engaged or you can be disengaged. Means you can fight the path of action or you cannot fight, which is the path of renunciation. But in either of these things, you can be engaged in an attached way, meaning with material desires, or you can be fighting in a detached way, meaning you don't want the fruit of that action. And if you are disengaged, if you don't want to fight, even then you cannot fight and yet be attached to the fruit of the result, or you could not want the fruit of the results. So what he is saying is that this or this is exactly the same. The reason why it is exactly the same is because when you do it in either of these ways, you will have no reaction. No reaction. Here is just the path of no action and here is a path of action. So either you take the path of detachment, not fighting but you're detached, so that's still good. Or if you're taking the path of engagement and you're detached from it, that is also good. So if you think about it, this is on different, the rungs of the yoga ladder. So basically this is karma yoga and then this is jnana yoga. Okay? This is karma kand, the karma kand section, and then that is actually the mithyachar. He calls him that this is a mithyachar. He is just externally renunciated. Internally, he still has this propensity to enjoy his senses, but he's just made a show of renouncing. So he's called a pretender. This is in 3.6, right on the top. Okay, just to refresh your memory. Okay, so chapter 5, step. To reach the top of any field, it is a long journey. So how many of you have got a celebrity in your mind? Who like a celebrity? Who idol person? Is there anyone who has got an idol in their life? Right? Materialistic, in a materialistic field. Yes. Yeah, I know. Football. Yeah? Messi or Ronaldo. So we may get inspired by a particular sports star and we want to emulate them. But there's a wrong process of doing the hard work to reach that level. It takes effort to cultivate the habits and the mindset of the top sports persons, and by that consistency of developing habits and mindset, we can also reach that level. Similarly, if you want to become a pure devotee, it takes a lot of effort of conscious decision making to re-engineer our lifestyle and practice spiritual activities to develop positive habits. So when you re-enjoy your lifestyle, this is changing your entire outlook of life. So it also takes time to devote ourselves to spiritual teachings and applying them, which then also purifies our mindset gradually. Okay? Just as if you want to achieve the top in a material field, the same is there in the spiritual field as well. Okay? But every journey starts with a small step. So now the steps which lead to further entanglement in the world, or they are steps which leads to a life of liberation, freedom and spiritual bliss. So in chapter 5, Krishna explains how the journey towards spiritual perfection is not a 0 to 100. It's a step-by-step process. Okay? So S stands for stay in the world. That's from text 1 to 12. T stands for 3 doers from text 13 to 16. E, equal vision, 17 to 28. And P, peace, 29. Okay? So S, stay in the world. Krishna explains why Karma Yoga, or working in devotion, is actually easier for Arjuna to perform and also for us than merely renouncing our work. Yeah? The reason why is because we are not of pure consciousness. We have material consciousness. So we must be engaged in some work that will purify our consciousness. If you remember, we said that we can engage ourselves in work, but we can make that work worship through the four R's. What are the 4 R's? We discussed this in our previous sessions. Means, first of all, your work has to be righteous. Yeah? It has to be righteous, meaning it should promote goodness and not exploit other people. The results that we get from that work, we need to offer those results that we get or acquire back to Krishna in some way or form. Then we remember Krishna while we do the work. Just like as was explained that when you're going to a shopping center, then automatically when you're shopping, you're already remembering, oh, this is what my child would like. So even though the child is not there with you, where is your consciousness? Your consciousness is with the child. So like that, when you're doing your work in the world, you can remember Krishna while doing it. And in the remaining time, we are working from 9 to 5. But what are we doing from 5 to 9? The non-office hour works or non-school time work time, we can utilize the time to cultivate more Krishna consciousness. Yeah? So Krishna emphasizes the importance of staying in the world to Arjuna and us as a safer method to make spiritual advancement. And he says it is also artificial and detrimental to completely sever oneself from worldly ties prematurely in pursuance of spiritual perfection. So there was this one story of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was Srila Prabhupada's guru. And somebody told him, what are you guys doing? You're just chanting Hare Krishna 24 hours a day. Anyone can do it. What's so special about it? And so he took it as a challenge. He says, okay, you think that anyone can do it. So the next day, he put a poster. And he circulated the poster as an advertisement in the newspapers everywhere. He says, you come to our temple. We will take care of your food, your clothing, your medical bills, whatever it is. We will take care of it, provided that you can stay in the temple and chant for 24 hours a day for 6 months. Can you do that? People came. They took it as a challenge. No one even lasted a week. Yeah? Because they cannot just give up and go completely in the spiritual side. No, it is a step-by-step process. Okay? So the path of Karma Yoga will offer us a progressive means for spiritual development. So what this means is that we are not basically artificially giving up our senses. We are utilizing our senses and our mind and intelligence and everything in good work. This good work is better than starving and not doing anything. Because what happens is that unless the senses are engaged in good work, because we are not yet purified, it will, if you're not engaged in good work, it will go into bad work. It will look for engagement in bad work. So performing good work will purify us, and when it's purifying us, we will get knowledge. And this knowledge comes in the forms of realizations. These realizations solidify inside of us and gives us more and more conviction to stay on the progressive path. Okay? Now an added benefit is the goal that is reached by a person who applies himself to Karma Yoga or to Jnana Yoga is ultimately the same. If we think about it, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, they're just rungs on a yoga ladder. Ultimately it's going up to where? To Bhakti Yoga. That's where the perfection is. So if the end goal is the same, but these are just two different paths, then why do you want to go up the harder path? Take the easier route up the mountain. Yeah? Why take the harder route? So why take the hassle of going down the more difficult Jnana Yoga route? And also, just think about it logically. If God has given us a body with the ability to perform work and activities, and then after giving all this, God given us all this, we make the conclusion that the aim of the body is to not do any activity for fear of entanglement. God has given you a body to do activities, to carry out your desires, to do everything. But if you're not going to be utilizing it for doing activities for fear of entanglement, then that is a premature understanding. So what causes bondage or entanglement is not activity itself. It is misdirected activity. Okay, it's not activity itself, it is misdirected activity. Okay, just as a lotus leaf, so this is what Krishna says in 5.10. He says that a karma yogi is like a lotus leaf. Just as a lotus leaf is surrounded by water but remains completely dry, a karma yogi stays in the world but remains free from material influence. Okay? So how does one remain immune from material influence? So for here we need to understand how is it that one gets entangled. Okay? So what gets entangled is actually our consciousness. Okay? For example, we take an alcoholic. An alcoholic is actually free to roam anywhere. He can roam in any part of, say, Mombasa. But where will he end up going? He will end up going to a bar. Why? Because his consciousness will push him towards going for that place, yeah? So, periodically, it becomes so filled with thoughts of alcohol that until they have a drink, they will feel tormented, yeah? But how does our consciousness become entangled? It gets entangled because of impressions in our mind, okay? But how are impressions created? Impressions are created by sense perceptions, okay? These are created by sense perceptions. And it depends on three things: the frequency, the duration, and the intensity of these perceptions that determine whether these sense perceptions are transformed into impressions in the mind or not. Okay? So detachment is basically preventing those perceptions from sticking to our mind. Okay? Now if you look at the next slide, this whole diagram will tell you everything I've said in a summary. So, sense perceptions. We cannot avoid sense objects, because we cannot completely avoid getting in contact with them, right? sometimes you might see something explicit, something you might want to avoid it, but you're walking down the street and then there comes to be a donut shop. Now you see a donut shop, your mind will be like, oh my God, it's a donut shop. Yeah? You cannot avoid it. You're walking down the street, but you just happen to come across a donut shop. So as soon as you see a donut shop, what happens to your tongue? It starts to salivate. So salivating of the tongue is not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, because salivation is also prerequisite for pre-digestion. Right? It's a natural bodily function that is required. Yeah? So the three levels, sense, perceptions affect on three levels. The three levels are biological, psychological, and this is the last one is intentional. Okay? These two are involuntary. Your body will automatically react to this. But what we can control is our intention. Yeah? Sometimes you might see a beautiful girl walking down the street and you might happen to catch a glance at her. Glancing is one thing, then staring is a different thing. Okay? And when you start staring, then your mind says, okay, now you can pursue. You can start to chase after that girl. So sometimes just seeing a beautiful object, it might cause changes in the body on a gross level and at a mental level. But whether you have the power to chase it, that is in your control. Right? So if this thing is happening, so these are sense perceptions. The frequency, duration, and intensity. The more you do it, the stronger it is, and for the longer you do it for, this will impact our resistance to that. It will focus more here. Okay? Then these impressions, where are they stored? They are stored in the mind. When they are stored in the mind, it influences our consciousness, and so our consciousness then tells us to go and pursue that sense object for enjoyment. And so then you perform an action in the spirit of sense gratification, and so the result of that is that you get entangled in that activity. Okay? So the first barrier to stopping our consciousness from getting entangled is that we can regulate our senses from the interactions with the sense objects. Okay? There are three things. We have discussed this before. There is the soul, right? Then there is a subtle body. What is a subtle body made of? False ego, intelligence, and mind. Okay? And then there is a gross body. Now the gross body is made up of our senses. Okay, many things, but primarily we'll take senses here. And then this is the outer world, where we have all the sense objects or stimulants. Okay? So the first thing that you can do is create a barrier here. You can try and get away as much as possible from stimulants. Right? You can, if you know that you're walking home and there's going to be a donut shop on the way, you can change your direction of going back home. You can avoid walking past the donut shop. Right? That's one. And then another thing that you can do is you can strengthen your intelligence with knowledge. If you look at chapter 3, we said how to fight temptations. And we said cost. If you remember, anyone remembers the acronym COST in chapter 3? Then if you remember, then this is how we fight temptation. So this is the first barrier, and the second barrier is here, where we store, we strengthen our intelligence with transcendental knowledge. So there are two things. You can fight it externally or you can fight it internally. Okay? Now, which one is better? Internally. Because you are not in control of the outside world. What can you control?
Yourself.
You can only control yourself. You can only control your intellect. You can strengthen your intellect. Satyananda Swami used to say that there's a big fight between two dogs. Two dogs are fighting. And he asked, who do you think will win? And everyone was like, oh, this one, dog A or dog B. He said, the dog that you feed is the one that will win. So you can feed your intelligence or you can feed the mind. Okay? If you feed the mind will overpower the intelligence. And if you feed the intelligence will keep the mind in check. And when the mind is when the mind is in control, where are the impressions? Where are the impressions? Where are they stored? They are stored in the mind. So when the intelligence is stronger than the mind, then even the impressions can be changed. Okay? So this is basically a scientific understanding of what happens inside us. Again, and what results in us getting entangled in our actions. So, a detached worker is actually very hard to notice. Okay? What sets a detached worker apart from an attached worker is their consciousness whilst performing activities. So in the world, if you look at it, you can see a material person and you can see a spiritual person. They might be doing the same things, but their consciousness is different, and that is why they will be getting different results. For example, people eat, and also monks in the temple eat. But when monks eat in the temple, they are not getting the reactions for eating food, but people outside will get reactions for eating food. How many of you, okay, maybe not the kiddos, but a bit older people, how many of you have seen a cassette? Have you seen a cassette? You know, inside a cassette there are two spools, right? And then there's a small tape that goes around. So when the cassette is playing, both the spools are moving, but in one of them the tape is getting less, and in another one it is getting more. So both of them are moving, but one is getting less and one is getting more. So even though both of them are working, a spiritual person is working, a material person is working, but for a spiritual person, when he is working, he is not getting reactions to that work, so his bank balance, karmic bank balance, is reducing, while for a materialist it is increasing. Okay? So the question now comes is how to change our consciousness from material to spiritual. So in school we learn A, B, C, D, E, F. We are going to learn the same thing here. A stands for association. Yeah? By associating with spiritual people, you are more likely to develop spiritual desires. As simple as that. In Gujarati they were saying, Jevo sang evo rang. Whoever you associate with, that type of consciousness you will imbibe. Okay? B, books. By taking wisdom from the scriptures and applying them in our life, one will see deeper and deeper meanings coming to life. This intellectual conviction will get greater and greater to perform to go on spiritual life more and more. Yeah, when you start reading books. C is you need to then do some chanting, or this is now applying the theoretical knowledge in a practical daily life activity. Okay? By practical demonstration of devotional service, one attracts the mercy of Krishna, which helps us to advance spiritually. D is to do dham vas. Dham means holy place. Vas means to stay. So it is important to go to holy places, because what happens in holy places? There's a spiritual vibes. There's spiritual vibes there. And also what happens is that highly saintly people are staying there. So when we go to holy places, we have to take advantage of this opportunity and connect with highly advanced spiritualists and also the spiritual vibrancy of the place. And also we get to learn more about the pastimes of Lord. We get to hear more about the Lord there. So we get greater and greater attraction to get closer to the Lord. Okay? E means doing Ekadashi Upas or fasting. Now, Ekadashi Upas, there's a hidden meaning here. Ekadashi. Eka means 1, Dashi means 10. So 1 plus 10, 11. And Upavasa. Upa means close, Vas means to stay. Right? To stay. As you said, Tamvas. So what does that mean? 10 come closer and stay. But 11. What does this 11 stand for? This 11 stands for the 11 senses. We have the mind, that is a chief sense. Then we have the 5 senses and the 5 knowledge acquiring and 5 working senses. So knowledge acquiring, which ones? Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, to touch. So the 5 senses are taste, smell, sight, touch, and hearing, which are basically done by the 5 working senses and knowledge acquiring senses. Okay, so 5 plus 5 plus 1. These are the 11 senses. When you take all your 11 senses and you bring them closer to who? Upa means to bring close to. You bring them closer to Bhagavan and you make them stay there next to Bhagavan. So on the day of Ekadashi, the reason for Ekadashi Upas is not that we get to eat different type of food. No, it is to utilize that particular day to detox. Like how many of people have heard of detoxing? You know, you eat a lot of food and then you need to have one day to detox the body to basically clean off all the toxins. Similarly, by staying and working in the world continuously, we need certain days to detox from the material life and immerse ourselves in spiritual life. So one day every 2 weeks is what is recommended. Yeah, to keep ourselves spiritually aligned. And then the last thing is food. By having sattvic food, yeah, which is offered to the Lord, it nourishes and cleanses us and boosts better consciousness for spiritual activities. My question now to you guys are, there are 6 different things here. Which barrier, we talked to 2 barriers here. There's an internal barrier and there's external barrier. Which ones do these 6 fall under? Where does association fall under? External. Yeah? You are getting closer to spiritual people. You're going there. So that's external. Books. Internal. Chanting. What? Internal. Dhamvas. What about Ekadashi Upavas? Huh? It's actually both. Yeah? And food. External. Yeah? So, see how we can spiritual life? We can basically strengthen both our barriers just by following these things. Isn't that great? Isn't that very practical? It is practical, isn't it? Okay. Now we go to number T. T is what? 3 doors. Okay. So we saw that what actually gets us entangled is when you're doing activities in the sense, in a way of sense gratification. So what is the opposite of gratification?
Control.
Gratification or control. Or so in a sense, the opposite of gratification is you're doing it for purification. When you start doing activities for purification, you are not looking at exploiting other things for yourself. You're looking at, okay, this thing, if I do it in the right way, will purify my consciousness. So when you're utilizing your body, when you're utilizing the body for purification purposes, then that is what doesn't cause you to be entangled. Okay? Now, what causes us to think, or what causes us to believe in sense gratification? What causes us to believe in sense gratification is the ideology that I am the only doer, and so I have got the full right to enjoy the results of my activity. Okay? When I feel that it's only my effort that is creating all the results that I'm getting in life, then I feel that I'm entitled to enjoy that. I'm entitled to enjoy the fruits of my labor. But actually Krishna says that a person is not the only doer. There are two other doers out there. Okay? So Krishna says that there are three types of doers in any activity. One is the individual soul. Then is the super soul. And third is that there is material nature. What are the functions of these three? The individual soul will only be able to desire. The super soul says, okay, this soul has got a desire. Let me check whether this person has got enough karmic credit which will enable him to fulfill his desire. If he does, tathastu. If he doesn't, you wait until you get enough credit. Just like a bank balance. You want to go for a holiday to America, but you only have $50 in your thing, and the visa costs like $100 to apply for. You cannot go to America until you have sufficient savings to make you able to afford to go to America for a holiday. As simple as that. And then when Super Soul sanctions the desires of the soul, it will make material nature bring about a situation for the soul to experience or to act out its desire. Okay? So, just like an infant, an infant lacks the ability to ride a cycle. But with the help of stabilizers, even an infant can ride a bike. So the two wheels are super soul and material nature. While the soul, the infant, wants to enjoy riding a bike. She cannot do it, but with the help of stabilizers it can. Now, if I want to build a skyscraper, if I want to build a skyscraper, what's the first thing that I need? You need permission from the local government or the county. You need permission to be able to actually even start to realize your desire. And then after you get permission, then what do you need?
A land, like
you need a land, you need materials, you need architects, you need engineers, you need constructors, you need all of these other things. And so all the things are representative of material nature, bringing them to you for you to be able to fulfill the desire of creating a skyscraper. Or if I say a toddler wants to lift a weight that he's seeing his father lift in the gym. Now a toddler has got no capacity to lift 50 kilograms. But just because he has seen the father lift, he has got a desire that even I want to lift. I want to be like my father. And now the father is looking. He's looking at the toddler trying to lift that 50 kilograms of weight. Of course, it's not possible. But then what does the father do? He'll step over and will lift it with the child. Now, who is actually lifting the weight? Okay, but and then not the child? Because the child is the one who desired it. The child desired it. That is why the father went. The father has finished his set. He is relaxing. But just because the child had the desire to do it, the father comes back to do the actual heavy lifting. Right? Or say there's another child who says that I want to go to the park. I want to go to the park. And then the parent takes the child to the park. And then the child enjoys in the park. He's going on the swings, he's going on the slides, he's doing everything. And then he falls and he scrapes his knee. And then he comes crying to the father. And then he says, you're responsible for me getting hurt. Is that true? Who created the desire to go to the park?
Child.
Then who decided to play around in the park? Then who got hurt in the park? But then how is it possible that the father is responsible for him getting hurt? Isn't that what we do in life? Huh? Isn't that what we do in life? We have desires, we try to fulfill our desires, and when we have an adverse reaction thrown upon us, who do we start blaming? We start blaming God. Yeah? So, now let us look at how this knowledge of staying in the world and that of these three doers. Now we have understood that Krishna has told us to stay in the world and work progressively for spiritual perfection, and to stay humble, understand, and to save ourselves from thinking that everything is for gratification but actually for purification. Understand that you are not the only doer, that there are three other doers. Let's try to apply this in real life now. And we'll apply it in a situation on how we can become successful with this knowledge. Okay? So, I don't know if you have heard of this book called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. Yes. So in this book, what she said is that she's found the secret source of success, and it is known as the law of attraction. If you vibrate the desire to the world that you want to achieve something in life, and you really want it, then the universe will respond in kind. How many of you have you seen Om Shanti Om? And you remember that speech of Shah Rukh Khan in that movie? And he says that, yeah, okay, I can't remember that dialogue, but similar dialogue, yeah? So, but think about it. There are many people who really want something. They work hard for that something, but they don't get what they desire. And on the other hand, there's some people who just seem to get lucky, and they achieve a lot with minimal effort. Doesn't that seem a bit unfair? Yeah? Does seem a bit unfair. So what Gita actually agrees with from the concept of the book is that we can design our destiny. But that is not it. There is something more to the secret. There's something more to the secret. The Gita teaches us that we aren't the sole doers, but there are two other doers involved. Our previous karma will play a big role in the super soul sanctioning our present desires. We may desire many material things, but without sufficient karmic credit, those desires will not fructify. Yeah? But deeper than that is that sometimes people desire things which are material, and that helps no one. It doesn't help anyone. So we need to, the Gita will urges us to redefine what it is that is worth attracting. Okay? So there's a story of a man, a woman, and a child with a genie. Okay? A genie comes to this family of three and tells that each one of them has got one wish. Okay? So the genie goes to the man or the father. He says, tell me your wish. He says that I want to go to heaven. And so, okay, poof, so be it. And the man was transferred to heaven. And says like, oh, this is fantastic. I'm now in heaven. I'm away from my annoying wife and my annoying child. Then the genie goes to the wife and he says, what do you want? What's your wish? The wife says, oh, I want to be with my husband. Poof, so be it. And then the wife appears in heaven, and the husband is like, oh my God, I left her on earth and I came here to heaven to enjoy, and now she's just followed me. But anyway, at least we are not on miserable earths. we are in heaven now. We can enjoy the higher taste of life. And then the genie goes to the child and asks the child, what is it that you want? What is your wish? The child says, I just want my parents back. So be it. The parents came back to earth. So back to square one. So we desire so many material things. But what happens with that is that we will ultimately become frustrated and we will not actually achieve everlasting happiness, which is what we want. Yeah? So we don't realize what it is that it is worth asking God. Similarly, there's another story of how there was once a man. He went to the top of a mountain. He was so frustrated with his life. And he went to the top of the mountain. He said, God, are you there? Are you there? And then God replies, yes, my son. What can I do for you? So the man says, what is billions of pounds for you? He says, God says, my dear child, it's not even worth a penny. And then he says, God, what is millions of years for you? He says, it is not even a moment for me, my child. He said, God, can you give me billions of pounds worth of money that's according to you? And then God says, give me a moment, son. And then a million years had to pass before he could get it. And then by that time it was finished. Yeah? Even Prabhupada, he gives a very nice example that there was once a village lady. And if you've gone to India and you see a village lady, they can carry so many pots on their head, like water pots. They can balance water pots and walk for long distances. Yeah. So there was this one village girl. She was carrying a lot of load on her head, a lot of water pots and everything. And then she was walking, and then she tripped, and all the pots came crashing onto the floor. And she cried out in desperation, Krishna! And Krishna appeared. He says, what do you want? Oh, can you just put this water pots back on my head? Because everything has gone down. I just want to put it back on so I can continue running. And so Krishna said, okay. He did it. And then she started walking. And then she realized, oh my God, God was there in front of me. And what did I ask for? I asked for all the burden to be put back on my head, when he could have just given me liberation right there and then. So we don't even know what type of desires that we want or which are actually good for us. So the Gita tells us what it is we need to desire. We need to change our desires to a spiritual desire. And this is the secret behind the secret. Okay? So, based on that, we will now see what the world teaches us to do and what the Bhagavad Gita teaches us to do. So, the worldview of success is that we need to enhance or upgrade where we are currently at. If you've got a 2 BHK house, get a 3 BHK house. If you have 1 car, get 2 cars. If you have 10 friends, get 50 friends. Whatever you have, get more. Keep on getting more. Yeah? You climb the social ladder. But the problem is that all these successes are based on the externals. So the world, in short, tells us to be the best. Be the best in this. If you're not the best, you're nothing. Yeah? If you're not number 1, no one cares about number 2. How many of you know who the second person on the moon was? Hardly anyone knows. But first person on the moon? Neil Armstrong. So the verse is be the best, be number 1. But that's not what the Gita teaches you to do. So this pressure and expectation from others, friends, family, society, or even media, they force us to work to pursue and achieve these various external meters of success. And we work as if we are attached to these bars of success. And if we fail from achieving that, then we feel like we are failures. And because we think that we are the sole doers, we take all that pressure on our shoulders. We take everything on ourselves. And what does that happen? It has 2 bad effects. If you're successful, what happens if you think you're the sole doer is that you'll become proud and you'll become complacent. And if you fail to achieve, then you become depressed and helpless, and in the worst case, you become suicidal. Yeah? The Gita, however, teaches us to instead work with detachment, because we are not the only doer, yeah, or we are not the only cause of our work. We are not determining the results of our own work. So we should only strive to endeavor and give 100% in our effort. The rest is up to the super soul's sanctioning. Yeah. So some people might say, oh, but that's kind of deflating. But actually, it's not. It's very liberating, because when you achieve external success, you realize that it was not only your effort. Yeah, it's also the super soul is sanctioning you to enjoy that. So in times of success, instead of getting proud and complacent, you become humble, you become grateful. And in times of failure, you do not become helpless and suicidal, but you actually become more grounded. You realize that actually, you know what, there's something higher planned for me in life. Yeah. So this spiritual dependency will ensure that we always focus on trying our best. Okay? By focusing on what we can control, success will always be around the corner. Just like in the Ramayana, there's a story of when the Ram Setu was being built. Now when the Ram Setu was being built, there were all kinds of creatures helping. There were big monkeys carrying huge boulders and throwing them into the ocean, and their contribution was a lot more. But then there were also small squirrels and ants. They were carrying small grains of sand, or they were carrying small rocks, and they were trying to fill in the gaps between the big boulders to make the bridge smooth. And Ram Bhagwan saw that, and he was as much appreciative to the squirrels and the ants as much as he was to the big monkeys. The big monkeys were like, get out of the way, let the big heavy lifters do their job. But Ram Bhagwan gave respect and gratitude and thanks to everything, because everyone has their own capacity to contribute. Yes? In fact, you realize that even if a billionaire gives a donation of 1,000 and a person earning 50,000 gives a donation of 1,000, whose donation is greater? Why? Percentage is greater. He is contributing more, he is sacrificing more. Giving 1,000 up for a person who's earning 50,000 is more painful than a person earning billions of shillings. Right? So that is what is looked at. It's not only the amount, but the intention behind it is what's looked at. So in essence, the world and all the spirit motivational speakers, they preach that you can be the best in everything. But the Gita says that is just going to be a recipe for frustration and disaster. Instead, you can be the best that you are meant to be. Yeah? I have a really terrible voice. I cannot sing for the life of me. I know I cannot. But I can at least try, or I can focus on things that I'm good at. I know I will never be able to reach the level of professional singers, but I have certain innate qualities that if I can hone and put my effort in, that will give me more happiness than trying to do something that I'm not really good at. Yeah? So, the Gita is not stopping us from actually being ambitious, adventurous, and bold, because this thing like, oh, just try your best, not be the best. Some people think, oh, the Gita is telling us not to be ambitious, it's not telling us to be adventurous, it's not telling us to be bold. In fact, it is actually telling us to do all of those things, but to recognize in which area we can do it in, right? It reminds us to always focus on trying our best, and this is known as the circle of influence, and all subsequent results are sanctioned by providence which are outside our circle of influence. So now we are going to take this concept from a book called by Stephen Covey, the habits of highly effective people, successful people. And one of the rules is the rule of the circles of life. In life, we have two circles. The circle of concern. Now, these are things that concern you in life, e.g., health, family, finances, the world situation, and everything. And then there's a circle of influence. These are things that you have a direct influence over. That is like who you choose as your friends, where you work, what you learn, your reactions to situations. All these are in your control. Now, the golden rule is that whichever circle that you focus on, that circle will expand. And frustration is the gap between the two. Because what happens is, progressive people will focus all their attention on the circle of influence. Right? They will focus on the circle of influence. And as we said, the golden rule is that whatever circle that we focus on, that will expand. And if that expands, the gap lessens, and so frustration lessens. When you start to work on what you can actually directly control, that is really helpful, because then you realize that by changing yourself, you can change the world. Gandhi used to say, Mahatma Gandhi used to say that I used to think that I need to change the world, but then realized that the best way to change the world is to change oneself. Right? People who focus on the circle of concern, which is known as results, they become preoccupied with things they have little or no control or influence over. So because they cannot control, it's so hot, they keep on complaining. But what happens is just increasing frustration in their life, because where is their energy being focused? The energy is being focused on things that they cannot control, right? Instead of things that they can control. If it's hot, then go inside the AC room that you can control. No? But people would rather complain than doing something for themselves. So there is this very nice prayer that is there in something known as the serenity prayer. It goes something like this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can change, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that basically applies to this theory of the circle of influence and the circle of concern. Okay? E means equal vision. So now we understand that, okay, whatever I'm getting in life is basically being sanctioned by the supreme soul, and the super soul is there in everyone. And then you realize that actually what everyone is going into their life is basically they are playing out their own desires that they've had, and the super soul sanctioning their desires for them. So the knowledge of this doership, you realize that actually the common factor is the super soul, right? So the advanced spiritualist will start to see that actually there's no difference between me and somebody else. Whatever I'm getting is a result of my desires and reactions which are being sanctioned by super soul. Same with this person, same with this person, same with this person. So you see that the super soul is there in everyone, and he's sanctioning everyone's desires as and how they want to do it, and according to their karmic bank balance. So an advanced spiritualist will see beyond the immediate and see the hand of God at play. He will see the hand of God at play in everyone's life, and so they realize that everyone is the same. We are all the same, and we are all souls, and there's a Bhagavan. So we see beyond the body. So in 5.18 is a very, very famous verse of the Gita. If you look at it as homework, you will see what I mean here. So The different bodies with different qualities are produced according to one's past actions, yet each entity is of the same spiritual quality. Thus, the advanced spiritualist is not only free from racism, nationalism, ageism, sexism, or any kind of ism. And in fact, he is free from speciesism. So if you want to tackle any of these isms, you need the knowledge of the Gita. So there's a story of, again, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada's guru. And at that time, there was a Indian nationalist by the name of Subhash Chandra Bose. How many of you know this personality, Subhash Chandra Bose? So at that time, India was subjugated under British rule. So Subhash Chandra Bose told Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that give me all your men, and together we will riot and we will liberate India. And what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said in return is that you give me all your men, and together I will liberate the entire world. I will liberate the world with spiritual knowledge. You are just liberating materially. I will liberate them from material life altogether. Yeah? And then finally, when you have equal vision, you can then start having peace. So Krishna repeatedly emphasizes the temporary nature of our stay in this world. He says that we come with nothing, and actually this is our realization. We come with nothing and we live with nothing. How many of you know Alexander the Great? Alexander the Great. Now, he had 3 last wishes. Do you know what the 3 last wishes is of his one? He said, okay, the hands should be dangling out of the coffin. That's one. What's another one? So who carries, so physicians carry his coffin. And third, said, line up the royal procession road with gold and silver coins from the treasury. He says, why? So, why do physicians carry his coffin? The lesson is that even doctors cannot save him. No one can save him from death. Why putting gold and silver coins on the road? So that to show the public that even though I managed to conquer and pillage and gain all this material wealth, I'm leaving it all behind. And why are my hands dangling? To show that I came with nothing, I'm living with nothing. Yeah? But what happens is, in the interim, we understand we come with nothing and we have to live with nothing. But in the interim, however, we claim proprietorship and develop attachments to various objects. Yeah? And this attachment is what causes us great anxiety and pain. Yeah? To the extent we develop a sense of detachment, and understanding that Krishna is actually the proprietor and ourselves simply as caretakers, to that extent we can experience a sense of peace within ourselves. Yeah? We understand that actually nothing belongs to us, right? Because everything is Krishna's energy. We'll see this in chapter 7. Krishna says that everything is coming from me only. Yeah? So if everything is belonging to Krishna and everything is Krishna's, then what are we giving up? Nothing actually belongs to us. So what are we giving up? So real renunciation is actually letting go of the mentality that I am the owner of my possessions. Actually nothing belongs to us. Our own body doesn't belong to us. If it belongs to us, then why do we leave it at the time of death? Even our body doesn't belong to us. Forget about everything attached to this body or the permutations that come out of the body. Yeah? So, in full Krishna consciousness, we are situated in our eternal constitutional position as servants of the Supreme Lord, and thus utilize all that we have, money, skills, life, everything in Krishna's service. Then this is what brings inner peace. And inner peace is then shown as outer peace. When one is free from attachment, greed, envy, and proprietorship, one can then propagate peace by his example. Because a person who is free from the 6 enemies is the one who is actually peaceful within, and because he is peaceful within, he will be peaceful outside as well, without. So for example, if I have a balloon, say I have a balloon, and I cover it with chocolate, and I put it in the fridge, and then I take an actual chocolate ball, and I put it in the fridge, and then after it's set, we take them both out, and you take a knife, you try to cut the chocolate ball, and you try to cut the chocolate covered balloon. Which one will burst? Both. It's the balloon. Why? Why is it more difficult to cut through the actual chocolate ball than it is to cut through the chocolate covered balloon? Because it is hollow. There is a vacuum inside it. Yeah. So even a slight pressure will cause it to combust. But because inside of this chocolate ball is proper solid, it's very difficult to cut through. So you need to have inner substance or inner peace. If there's no inner peace, you cannot have outer peace. Okay? So the question is as simply as that. If we give pleasure to Krishna, you automatically fulfilled. Just like if you water the roots of a tree, then the entire tree is happy. You don't need to individually spray water on each leaf. No, you just need to give it to the root. Or, as I say, you give food to the stomach and the entire body is rejuvenated. Just because your hand is tired, you don't just give chapati on your hand and say, hand, eat it. No, you give it to the stomach and then the hand will get energetic. Okay? So, it's a very simple formula. Make Krishna happy and you will be happy and peaceful. Any questions? Okay? Yes?
To give the chapati to the mouth.
Yeah, but then goes where?
Yeah.
Does it stay in the mouth? Does the chapati stay in the mouth? Where does the chapati go from the mouth? It goes to the stomach. Yeah? So, next is just the chapter 5 summaries. That is again, as always, for you to read in your own time. And so, thank you everyone for giving attention. Please, let's conclude. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.